It was bound to happen, inevitable. Not just a price increase, but a general disdain for the customer. Yet what could fuel such hatred? A look from a perspective, my perspective, a man born in the year 1985. Yet oddly enough, the new director of the anime on Netflix, Devil May Cry, he's also born in 1985, Avi Shankar. Then we have the feud between H3H3 and Hassan, which is like funny because H3H3 is also my age, right? 1985. I don't know how old, I don't care how old Hassan is. And I know, like, it's him versus idols, but when you think about it, and I'll like get to that, you're not really dealing with vibes anymore. He's just like an empty person, an empty shell, you know? And then, he made a video about it, which is actually kind of funny, to be fair, because it's not funny for the fact that he made the video and the content of it. It's the idea of, like, who he teams up with and their idea of how they made this video the most annoying, cringe thing ever, and it pisses everybody off collectively. Like, almost to, like, a degree I've never seen before. Like, maybe it was intentional, but I think that, like, there are people who lack any sense of self-awareness, you know? Like, if I were to go in front of a camera and talk to you with my left lipstick and I nailed all that shit, it's just like, you see my avatar, you're just like, I'm freaking out, right? And I'm comfortable with my lifestyle choices, right? But, like, when I want to subject my, casual viewers of this channel, so like, I'm there, they see gameplay video, footage, whatever, like maybe in the future, I'll do something along the lines of a face reveal, but like, not right now. I find that very funny, like, both Abby Shankar and H3H3, aka Ethan Klein, and age. So, I find that really hilarious. And then, you have little kids or, God forbid, like, grown adults throwing popcorn at, like, the Minecraft movie over the phrase chicken jockey uttered by the Trump hating man-child that is Jack Black. It's all this soy. As a man, what can you do? Like, I'm like a guy who lives on the edge of like his own fashion choices, and like, a lot of people don't agree with me and like me, and I find, even though in the past I had a problem with the way I interacted with people, like I just remained passive, nowadays I don't feel as uncomfortable because I think society has revealed itself to be very deeply troubled, because it's like, it's funny watching society's like ideal form of masculinity reacts to the decay, and it's almost poetic how like we have like this idea of masculinity and it's almost pushed on you by false gurus that like make money off of selling courses, and oftentimes they're on steroids, you know, PEDs, physical enhancing drugs, right? Or TRT, which is testosterone replacement therapy. And or like porn. Like let's look at a bunch of things. Like let's just say, for the lack of better terms, like you're not dealing with the majority of the human race playing on the even playing field. Like a lot of them are cheating. Just the way it is. And many young men experience this as well. Like, I hear in the UK, it's something like over 50% of the kids are on some form of, this form of drug. And like, I previously tried a bit of it, like to reverse some of like the feminization that I've experienced with like, doing hardcore other stuff, narcotics. But like, you know, these young children, well, young men, they're like assaulted, sensory overload, no impulse control, complete, you know, mental numbness, and they're fed this garbage advice from Andrew Tate. Yeah, Andrew Tate, holy shit. And like, the funniest thing about this guy is he's trying to put these men on a path towards homosexuality. And I know you probably think that's rich coming from me, but like, yo, hear me out, right? This guy made a video where he's equating, you know, the value of a woman versus the value of a trans woman, meaning a man uh, who identifies as a woman. Right? Now he wants you to take the value of that trans woman and put it above that of like a real woman if the real woman isn't attractive enough. And his words were, if she looks like Hulk Hogan, right? You know? And it's like such a weird analogy, and it's kind of troubling how it never got addressed, and it's almost mainstream in society that he's just like this, and his whole fan base is following like in that footsteps, like keeping it on the DL. Like I don't know if it's like willfully intentional or they just like they don't know the full context of what he said or what he wants to say about that. Because we're dealing with the ramifications of that now. Like we've never seen a level of like aggression from like people who are creative, right? Like let's say Andy Shankar, for example. You know, he takes creative liberties with the Castlevania franchise and makes Alucard bisexual. I don't know exactly what this adds to the story of a vampire video game, where you like, you know, run around and whip people and throw bottles of holy water at like, you know, monsters and stuff. But he also has a thong for some reason. Yeah, the first time I saw the anime, I was like a little taken back by it. But it's just like, you know, you're happy to see like the thing that you like growing up, or like, you know, you play like Castlevania Symphony of Night when you're like younger, and then seeing it when you're older, like, oh shit. And it's kind of weird because you think that a guy born same year as me would have that same reverence to Devil May Cry, or at least a little bit more than just like your standard adult who, you know, plays golf, has like, you know, medication, and like ultimately his wife or himself, they both casually cheat on each other and like live this like debaucherous life of meaninglessness. And you kind of get that feeling because like when you listen to the dialogue of Lady in the Devil May Cry anime, it's pure cuss word. It is pure cuss word. So like, where is this coming from? Who talks like, nobody talks like, this is like the conversation that you would have with your significant other, obviously female, like in a household where you guys aren't getting along. Like if you're in a household with a woman and she's talking like this, either like, you know, sit down and have like a long conversation with her about like her feelings and like what you did to hurt them, or like maybe consider getting another girlfriend, or stop like, I don't know, abusing her or something. Like what is the precedence of like, you want the swear words, but like they portray Lady as a purposeful, dislikable person, almost to emphasize the fact that, and this is what Adi Shankar is pushing with this story, like that America is going to hell, right? Because hell is like a dimension, it isn't like, you know, an afterlife type thing. Like you can just go there, teleport there, like in Risk of Rain, you know, teleport there. I don't think I made it this round though. But yeah, and then you find sympathetic on top of unsympathetic demons in hell. kind of like, on Earth, where you find, sympathetic and unsympathetic places. The parallels you draw. And it's kind of weird because coming from a guy, right, who, he's Muslim, it's like, wait, wouldn't it be kind of weird to, like, call them demons and shit? Because you're like, you're dressing well to look that way. And then I thought about it. And then I thought, like, wait, how does Asmongold fit into this, right? Because this is how I think H3H3 and the whole, like, business of this, like, idea of, like, Palestine and, like, the ongoing conflict, like, got kind of brought into this, and, like, to illustrate, like, America's almost imperialism in this matter, even though technically speaking, it's just all done on the defensive. Like, Israel's on the defensive, the United States is on the defensive. They just want the hostages back. They don't want to give the hostages back. They're giving all these excuses. They're killing them. They're torturing them. They basically committed, like, a vast amount of war crimes, even before, the fighting started. And there's still, like, a debate of whether or not it's so dumb, because it's like, can you imagine calling a Jewish person a person who genocides people? Like, that's so fucking twisted. But, like, I think it's done purposefully as a means to, like, make you feel angry. Like, they're doing it to make them almost, like, react or, like, act irrationally. And it's like this kind of scare tactic. And it's important to, like, point this out, because so Asmongold, right, was put into this anime, I kid you not, as this over the top commentator with a southern accent and a love of, the Lord and his country, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, right? I'm a Canadian, but I can appreciate the love of one's person's country. I love America. It's a great thing. A lot of great people. Great things. And yeah, Asmongold, laughed about it. And dude, Eddie, like, yo, dude, he's my age. He's my age. And I believe Asmongold is in his 30s, mid to early, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, there's a generational gap between us, you know what I mean? We're not exactly, I'm not like a decade older than him, but I'm not really, his peer, like, you know what I mean? Like, how there's always, like, a couple of years that people from a generation to generation can, like, associate with one another, and then it, like, skips after every certain amount of years. So let's say 4 to 5, right? And, like, so Asmongold is literally on the forefront of media with his streaming empire, right? Like, he has really good numbers. He's done it for decades. I think more than 2, maybe 3. Like, he's done it since he was a teen. So, like, he's hardcore, like, into World of Warcraft and, like, mostly MMOs and stuff, and then he started branching out, and then he started talking about, like, political topics. So he had this, like, take on Palestine, and he was completely right about it, unfortunately. That even though that being the case, a lot of his co-workers, like, mostly I think out of fear, but I also maybe think out of, like, some of them disgust, because you have this genuine, like, love of these Palestinian terrorists, right? And obviously not all Palestinians are terrorists, but you have to call it out. Like, you see it, like, there is a literal conflict going on where people are on the defensive, wanting it to stop, like the fighting to stop, and then the other side clearly provocating for more violence, for more, and it's not just isolated to Israel. You see it with Ethan Klein and Hassan Piker. And Hassan Piker is using his influence on these YouTubers, these streamers. I think they're Twitch, sorry, my bad, they're Twitch streamers, not YouTubers. Well, technically, iDubbbz or iCuts. So fucking empty shelf, man. Right? Is like, leading the charge. And it was one of the hardest videos to watch. Not because of the content, but because of that intro. That intro almost made me want to bite my lip off. Like, it was grating. And then a thing in my head, like, kind of snapped, like a kind of, a noise. Like a little, like, popping sound. And then I heard a ringing in my ears. and then it was all okay. No, but for real, man, like, they were just going in on this guy and leaving out the fact that they purposely harassed him, called CPS on this kid, saying that his kid was eating, dog poop and getting sick from a virus, and, no, sorry, parasite, and, semantics, but like, right, like they're just trying to ruin this guy's life, and it's kind of sad because the person who's at fault, unfortunately, in this situation, is Ethan Klein, and you want to know why? Oh, he's not gonna like the way. He's not gonna like what I have to say, man. Dude, you're my age. Why the fuck are you still friends with these types of motherfuckers, dude? And you have the nerve to act surprised? Dog, how many Israelis have died? And these people are fucking smiling about it. And whether those kids at the soccer field, or whether just like, passing on civilians and stuff, the victims of the attack, the whole time, these people have been on this fucking, high horse. Especially during this video, you can tell, and I can swear to myself, I was hearing Middle Eastern music playing in the background when they were doing the wake up part, and it made me want to fucking, and you realize why they did it, right? Because as angry as me, a casual viewer, is at seeing that, imagine how Ethan would feel if he didn't have, like, the support and the intelligence that he has, or maybe he's like, a more stable person than me, but like, I find that to be enticing, like, considering the circumstances, enticing, irritating, like, inciting me to commit violence against you. Like, let's be honest, if anything bad happens to these people, it is more than well deserved. It's not out of the question to say, like, people who want violence and harm to other people should deserve that same, rhetoric upon themselves, because when does this ever stop? When does it ever stop with, like, these conflicts around the world, and the blame is put on you, and you're wondering, like, what did you ever do as, like, a person who has no control over the military, who has no control over how much taxes they pay, so, like, how the wars are getting funded, basically, and you're on the sideline, and they can say, yeah, there's civilians on there. Do you know what happened after the October 7th, about when they got back to their, side on the fence? All the prisoners were saying the exact same thing. There's crowds, entire swarms of them, cheering the fact that they got kidnapped, they got captured. They were throwing rocks at them, spitting on them, tearing off their clothes, slapping them, and I have to bring this up because you're getting the same treatment. And it's not from just a particular religion, it's from a lot of people. There's like university students who are treated. They're like, now we have, I don't know what it is, disgruntled boomers. They're here in Canada, they like want to vote for Carney and additional carbon taxes and like, immigration to like ruin the economy and nobody can buy a house and stuff. Like we have like so many bad people, so many villains, right? And I think some of them are weird, like you don't actually think you see them, but you do. Like the whole idea of like the sun grad circle, like as much blame as you want to throw at the man for like being, I don't know, I guess dishonest in a way. I mean, he doesn't really owe anybody anything. I don't understand like what the prerogative of his YouTube channel catering to like a certain crowd of people. If he says in his like rhetoric, or no, sorry, in his YouTube post that like, yeah, I don't want these people in my YouTube channel, right? Like, he's allowed to say that, and I gave it some thought. And I looked at the people making videos about them, and like, dude, they're like lying. Like, dude, I can't, I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, not everybody who's making videos about him is my age, but like, this whole idea of these old people, people who are supposed to be like, gentlemanly like and like dignified and, intelligent. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I would imagine Adi Shankar actually played Devil May Cry game instead of just directing the movie. Like he would play at least one of them, just the first one maybe. Or if he's like going for like, a young Dante, play 3, right? And then he just, pull from that. He pulls all the characters just like out of nowhere. So you have an episode where you see like multiple game franchises, like the series. So you get like enemies from Devil May Cry 3, 4, and 5. All in one scene. And you're just looking at this, you're like, this is made by like an old guy who has played this game and no, who's seen like a poster or a picture of it. And it's like, yeah, I know about that Devil May Cry. And he just like reads books about it. And you're like, oh, that's the name of this character. Oh, that's the name of that character. Like, and like, this is coming from me, like a guy who like has like flamboyant style and fashion and stuff. And like, like, I would be like the last person to judge anyone on their appearance, right? But looking at Addy, like, you kind of get the idea that maybe, and that's okay, like, it's okay to be like that, but it's kind of weird where you're dismissive of like the real issues in life and like your lack of intelligence in terms of like designing a franchise that's just so basic that all you needed to do was like, he didn't even need to play the game. He could have done one of 3 things. 1, play like a playthrough of it, like someone who streamed it or something. 2, like watch all the cutscenes in the game. You can do that with like the movie viewer, right? Like if you're just pressed on time, you're just like some Hollywood big shot, Or 3, right? You could have at least, like read the anime, just for the sake of saying, hey, we have, source material for this, like, franchise that I'm making,
defeat after defeat. That man's body was reaching its
a thing
limit.
on, like, it's so shockingly bad
He couldn't die yet.
how
The
far
man
he's
had a
pushed
job
it
that
back.
must be done.
And it's
To
almost
defeat his twin
willful
brother.
in a way. How, like, he wanted the series, the franchise, to be bad. Because he has Johnny Young Bosch, who voiced Nero in the series, to voice Dante. So he has the keys to the castle. And yet he can't, like, a rudimentary understanding of the franchise, right? Even like a cutscene like this, without any context. Why is Virgil looking like that? Like after the conflict of Devil May Cry 1, what happened to him after, the Mundus, incident. Like, it does more in this cutscene than it does in his anime, littered with like, pop references, Green Day, you know, anti-American rhetoric, and also Dante being emasculated into like a Marvel-esque movie character that has no originality. He's just throwing quippy liners and being a goofball and just something you've seen before, just not appreciate. And the more I think about it, the more I realize what we lost, you know? I mean, I had to make this video. It just ate me up inside because I made like a rant in a comment section and maybe I pushed things too far, you know? Try my best to not get too racist with this. But I have to say what I have to say because Devil May Cry is an important franchise. A series that will probably last longer than me. Have a nice day.